Of course, it's changing what we're thinking about and how we're working on a number of levels. If AI is an architect killer, I don't really trust that.
Maybe on that note, we obviously have hired dedicated research on AI and the application of it in the early ideation of the sketching form of formulation. But we're also convinced that it will not be the end of architects, human architects.
Do you see artificial architects coming up?
No, I think there's obviously at the moment such a strong overrated kind of hype on what AI means and what it does, and I think it will not end us as a species. But there is clearly help in getting a very broad understanding of what has been done and what has been generated by us as a society, as a species, and LLMs are extremely helpful in the way we can access knowledge and also fuse knowledge into propositions, into new ideas is stunning, absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, what it doesn't deliver yet is three-dimensional space. I think LLMs cannot be trained the same way on three-dimensional assets as they can be trained on textual or image-based information. And that's widely available and has been made available by us in our slightly naive operations with the internet. 3D assets are actually under lockdown. We have no access in the same way, in the same magnitude as the other sources. So I think there is going to be a much steeper learning curve to actually operate in three-dimensional space. What we're doing with AI is ultimately just image-based. Therefore, I think we will have a bit of time left, but AI will come in the way how we envisage virtual spaces, and we haven't talked about metaverses, we haven't talked about collective virtual spaces that are developing. Of course, we had a slump after Meta went in too fast, but there is a very steady development of non-physical reality, collective environments that are commercial, and they will ultimately extend our way we do business, our way we socialize. I mean, we have younger generations already in virtual space socializing via Minecraft and Roblox, and this will mature. And I think our expectations, we see already from clients the way how they consume our VR products at least at the moment, but ultimately when the Minecraft generation will come into client level, then they will expect a blended reality experience, a blended reality product. We call it cybernetic architecture, but it is ultimately an intermeshing of our information, available information.
Cybernetic architecture.
Yeah. And it's both realities blended together in a sort of optimal way that we benefit from information overlays, from artificial constructs, language barriers, for example, right? I mean, if we did a competition for a boulevard in Paris for pavilions, and you have a multinational audience coming in over the seasons, and you could have overlays for those different types of people. So we're saying architecture will ultimately extend out into the virtual space, and they will be baked in very specific mixtures of virtual and physically real environments. And I think that's where we talk about comfort as well, right? What is it that we need as a species? How do we socialize? How do we set up in a global environment? And global issues like climate change, etc. How do we deal with it? I mean, how do we create policies? How do we exchange opinions? I think two-dimensional Facebook and Zoom is not sufficient to express and to really interact remotely. But we'll see.
The car is knocking, so you agree? Or
I guess I wanted to ask if the hardware is, I mean, one thing is that idea about a seamless experience. Another thing is in putting on these glasses and having that part of the experience.
Yeah.
So that could be one way of taking the discussion. I think the other thing that's a little bit interesting that might be worth discussing is that one of the barriers I would see to introducing more automation into architecture, for example, is that there's a high degree of thinking and analysis that works through the sketching for the architects to understand a complex brief and solve that. You know, you're working through the whole thing, creating a volume studies, creating the plans, applying skills that are based in certain technologies, 2D, 3D in this case, to get an intuitive understanding of the project that allows you to become creative and create something beautiful, right? Automating part of that means that you might lose part of your handle on a project. Every technology comes in with a new set of skills, potentially taking out another set of skills. And we can see now with our presentations just in the last couple of years, especially driven by Enscape and the fact that these sort of images are becoming cheaper and easier to produce, that we are really ramping up in how we present our projects visually. And I'm wondering from where you're sitting also, I mean, you guys are obviously ramping up.
But I have not talked about automation, right? So, I mean, the design, the control
But
over design is-
the image creation side
Yep.
is an add-on, of course, to the sort of classic like plan, all this other stuff. But I'm wondering how you're balancing this sort of stuff. That a lot of energy can go into producing beautiful images that might not actually work in plan, and how you balance these two things, for example. I can see there's a challenge there when the technology becomes the driver.
we would imagine when we started using offline high definition atmospheric photorealistic renders, I think we're pretty much sort of a precursor to VR and also AI generated images. And I think there is always going to be kind of a cultural response to that, and there's a hype, and then ultimately you will slowly come to a kind of a very pragmatic usability of this technology. I'm clearly seeing at the moment there is a hype in AI, and we're certainly seeing that all architecture will be generated by some LLMs for us. But a good functioning piece of architecture is a very difficult thing to do, and it has to do with a lot of compromises and a lot of decision making that you will have with your client in your conversations. AI does not have the existential drive and the need to make compromises. It will learn a lot. It will have a lot of oversight and will be able to inject ideas or surprises, right? I mean, that we all need in order to be creative. But I think it's not going to be the decision maker, is not going to be the creator, and there's nothing automated about it, right? I mean, I have not experienced a single project that was identical to the other and the previous one, right? So we always have to make very unique decisions that have to come from us as humans, as users and creators.
How are you embedding the production team?
Yeah.
I imagine there's a production team to create the VR experiences that you use to have these conversations with the clients. How are they? Are they sitting next to the design team? Are they embedded within the? Like, how does that link?
So I had my first encounter with AI as a commercial request, and it was the project director who said she had extensive conversations about the program, about the design projects, and now she requested AI input. Right? So in a way, we're already talking about the secondary step. There's a brief, there's an understanding of the project, and then the content is going to be injected, and we have options. I mean, this is something we would have done by hand, or we were still doing by hand in most cases. So I don't think there is a big loss of control, right? It's really about, first of all, it is fed and trained on our work, and it knows what we want, and we have obviously the interaction with the software, but ultimately the decision has to be made by the humans, right? And also at the moment it's two-dimensional, so to actually extract it and turn it into a precise piece of space and architecture, you still have to flesh it out to it manually. To do this via LLMs, I think we're not quite there yet, right? We're dealing with height maps. I mean, we're trying to extract spatial information, but this is coming from two-dimensional kind of material.
I can see the role, and this is probably also more the approach that we're taking to this, that there are very specialist areas where these things can become helpful. Like a little bit like we're working with simulations, right? I mean, so we can find, it's about finding the right problem again for the technology to actually become meaningful in answering. And I think some of the key questions where you need a lot of variations around something, for example, where you have certain things that you can ask, we can see these things come in and we're experimenting with it, but it's about, again, at least, again, from where we're sitting, working from within inside the workflow, understanding that if you were to create a perfect workflow for technology, it would look very different than what we have, and it's going to be very hard to actually drive that through with the sort of cultural and organizational aspects of the studio as well, right?
Well, I don't necessarily see such an enormous shift. Right? I think the workflow, the actual process is not that much changed,
right.
But there's hidden costs. Obviously, there's also hidden sustainable aspects, right? Because big server farms waste a lot of energy. But we will see what the future holds. I mean, I'm agnostic. I think AI clearly helps mediate certain information, certain decisions, helps to support us in those decisions. And, I mean, we will see what we would do without it very soon, maybe. Those